Welcome to the UIAAA Connection podcast. Hometown Ticketing is proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection podcast and to provide schools nationwide with the best options for digital ticketing for their events. Visit their website at hometownticketing.com to learn how they can make digital ticketing possible and simple at your school. Thank you to Hometown Ticketing for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection podcast.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today, we're thrilled to have as our guest, Clayton Carter, Certified Master Athletic Administrator and Director of Athletics at Wendover High School. Clayton, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
Let's have you start by sharing with our audience where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, etc.
Well, actually was born out of country. I was born in Canada. My mom's a Canadian citizen.
Where
and
in
still
Canada?
A Canadian citizen. In Alberta, Cardston, Alberta.
Okay.
So met my dad at BYU, but had me up there. Me and my sister are both born up there. But basically, I was raised in Draper, Utah. Attended high school at Alta High School, and then went on to college at Snow College, and then up to Utah State.
So, are you a dual citizen since you were born in Canada?
I am a dual citizen. I don't know much about my Canadian citizenship, but I am a dual citizen.
So, when you visit Canada, is it easy to cross the border, or just like everybody else? Because they require passports now.
Yeah, I got a passport. It's a U.S. passport, but I use a passport. Before they required you to use a naturalization certificate, or you could, when I got older, I had to use those type of things. But I've always had a passport, so I've just always used that. So.
Perfect. Well, let's talk about some of the time you spent in the youth leagues in the Alta boundaries. I'm sure you played probably quite a few sports. Share some stories from that.
Well, I was like any other kid. I actually was in Jordan for most of my young career. I thought I was going to go to Jordan High School till Alta was built.
Oh, okay.
And so I played football through the Jordan Association at the time. Basically played YBA basketball and Little League baseball for growing up, and then of course when I got to high school, I decided not to play baseball. I decided to do track. I wanted to do something just a little bit different. So, besides the football, basketball, there's also track.
So once you got to, you went to Snow, then to USU, and did you always want to be a coach? Because of where you ended up in Wendover, coaching led to the AD? How did that all work out?
Well, yeah, I kind of liked athletics in general. I'm like one of those kids. I wasn't a great athlete, but I worked hard. And I wasn't the star. I didn't play college sports, but I always liked to play. And it didn't matter what I was doing. I played, and I learned the games fairly easily. But I guess you could say I never mastered one to be the elite athlete. Mm-hmm. But if I play racquetball, I can play it. I can play ping pong. I can play tennis. Any type of game like that, I usually pick it up pretty quick. But again, to be elite, you've got to really train at that certain athletic or the sporting event or game that you're playing at. And so I like to play. And so when I went into college, I originally wanted to do physical therapy. Then found out how hard the science is and some of the math was going to be in it. Then, well, maybe that's not what I want to do. But I always wanted to be involved in something to do with sports. And so when I graduated from Snow with my 2-year degree, I went up to Utah State, decided to look into teaching as an option. My major is actually history. I have a minor in PE, and I figured I better have a stronger major because back then in the in the mid to late 80s, jobs were a lot harder to find than they are now for teachers.
Absolutely.
And so when I finally graduated, with a bachelor's degree in history. And so when I looked for jobs, I thought I'd be a history teacher, but my first job was actually in Rupert, Idaho at Minico High School. And
Okay.
I taught PE there, along with what came, the two coaching positions that came with it was an assistant football coach and an assistant track coach, with the track coach specifying to be a pole vault coach. Well, even when I did track in high school, I wasn't a pole vaulter. I was a hurdler and a long jumper. So I learned real quickly, I better learn what a pole vault person does. And so back then you didn't have the internet, so you had to go to the library and look at books and stuff like that to try to learn that. And so I learned really quickly what it was to be a pole vault coach. But I had a good teacher, a good head coach there. He worked with me real well and taught me some basic things. Then after that first year at Minico, my wife wasn't too happy there, so we decided to move on and find us another place to work. And it just happened that Wendover had openings for my specific abilities and my wife's, who's an elementary teacher at the time. And they both had job openings. Again, we're talking about the 80s when it's a little tougher to find jobs. And so we're both happy to have something to do. And that's how we ended up in Wendover, and we've been here ever since.
Excellent. Talk about some of the mentors you've had that have made some effect on your life, both as a student and as a coach in AD.
Well, I think the first one, like a lot like everybody, you got to look at your father. My dad, he was a hard worker. He's a banker, but his big thing to do is he runs marathons, and he's been a marathon runner for many years, and he still runs them. He's turning 80 this summer, and he's still planning on running the St. George Marathon in October. I don't know how he does it, but he does. He trains a little bit here and there for it. Not very fast anymore, he tells me, but he still goes at it. He did it last year, and he's planning on doing his 80-year-old this year. So
good for him.
I really respect what he does as a person and as a competitor and so forth. I had a good coach when I was younger in high school. His name was Ken Black. He was a JV coach at Alta, and he was also my. I took a class from him, a basketball class from him when I was in 9th grade, and he really had a good effect on me, and had a lot of. He seemed to like me and kind of took me under his wing and showed me some things that I needed to do to be a better player. And I think he made me at least a good competitor at basketball. And then I also had a boss, one of my principals here in Wendover. His name was John Barris, and he was the best principal I ever worked under. And he taught me, something that I kept with me for many years. And he had a little saying. He says, we're in the kid business, and you're good at what you do. And I always took that to heart, because we are in the kid business, but us as teachers and coaches and administrators, we are good at what we do. And we just got to show that we're good at what we do. And so I think those are the three people that really had a huge effect on my life as far as mentors and so forth.
Excellent. Let's talk for a moment. I know you've been the AD at Wendover for as long as my memory goes back. But so let's just say this, the job of AD today, how has it changed from when you first became the AD over 25 years ago?
Well, when I first got the job as AD, and this was my 30th year as an AD, and basically it was here you're gonna get set up for games. You're gonna schedule some games here and there for your teams, and show up for some supervision. That's kind of the way it was back then. now, of course, with technology and so forth, it's all technology based, paperwork, computer work, just there's a lot of people out there, groups out there that have made your job in some ways easier, but there's more expected of you. And as you get involved as an athletic director, and at all levels, the state level and at the national level, you find out how much there really is to be a good AD. And I always tell my principal, if I could do about half my job, I'm doing well, because there's so much out there and not a lot of time to do it. So I think those are the biggest changes I've seen.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. So you talked about the state association and you talked about the national group, and you've been an integral part and member of both of those. So talk for a moment with our audience about your journey with the UIAAA and your journey with the NIAAA.
Well, when I first became an AD, I started right off with the UIAAA. Back then, I think we called it just the Utah Athletic Administration, and I was part of ADEC or ADAC. I can't remember which one was first.
ADAC was first, yeah.
I think it was ADAC, but I started right off my first year as an AD. I was still a very young adult at the time. I was probably still in my mid to late 20s when I started with that association, and I was our region rep, and I basically stayed on as region rep, I think, for almost every year. Maybe there was 1 year I was replaced, but then put back on the next year, until I became president of the association back in the mid 2010, 2015. I think it's 2015 is when I was president. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it was a great experience for me, not only to learn as a young adult, but also to start rubbing shoulders with some of the most experienced people in our state and at some of the biggest schools in our state. You know, coming from Wendover, we're such a small school, we don't see a lot of the things that go on in the bigger schools. But once you get to know those you make those connections with those individuals, you start learning a lot. You know, such, long time ago ADs like Lou Andrus and Joel Gardner and
Sure,
and Braithwaite, Tim Braithwaite, and Paul Dart, was in my school district, and got to know him at an early age. And those guys were very, very good and very influential in me as an athletic director. So,
well, talk to our audience for a moment about the importance of certification. I know you're a CMAA and one of the early CMAAs in Utah, and of course now we've got a few more. But talk about the certification and why it's so important for an athletic administrator.
This is kind of I kind of look at this as an interesting story, because when I first got my CAA, there wasn't a lot of CAAs out there. I know you'd gotten yours, and I think who's the one that was West Jordan? I think it was
Dan Cowan.
Dan Cowan's. Yeah, you were two of the first to get it, and I was on ADAC at the time, and you guys were on there, and I kind of thought about it and saying, if I could ever have a little bit of time to where I could really look at it, I kind of wanted to do that. And I kind of wanted to do it out of, I don't know what respect is the word, or I don't want it to be showy, but I thought, if I could be a CAA at a small school, I think there's some respect to that. I think people will look at that and say, hey, you know what, this guy, even though he's at a small school, he might, know some things about being an athletic director. And I wanted to be a good athletic director. And so when I got that, I think got that in 2000. And then I was still coaching full time, as a basketball coach and track coach. And I got thinking, I'd like to get my CMAA, but I just never felt like I had time. But then finally in 2008, I decided to give up my basketball head coaching job. And that was the first thing I wanted to do. I wanted that next step of education as an athletic director. And again, being at a small school, I thought, hey, if I could be one of the first people in a small school to get my CMAA, I think that's pretty cool. And so I felt like they were very important that way. And along the way, of course, you're taking a lot of the LTC classes. You're learning, again, how to be a good AD, and then you can apply it to your job out where you're at.
So talk for a moment, and I know, so share with our audience, you've spent probably 6 or 7 years, maybe longer, on the certification committee for the NIAAA. Yep. So talk about that and some of the successes and stories you had and the people you were able to meet being on that committee, because that puts you right in there with everybody nationally that wants to get their CAA. So talk about that with our audience.
So when I decided I wanted to try to be on one of the committees for the NIAAA, I said, you know what am I most confidence in? I have the most confidence in doing. I thought, certification would be a great one for me because I am certified. And I have taken a lot of the LTI classes. And so, I felt comfortable that would be a good position for me. And so when I applied for it and then I got it, I thought, hey, this is great. And so I was on there for 6 years. And the first year, of course, is always a learning experience, but you get the job of reading the CAA applications. And then you start getting to meet people around the nation. And then I think it was the second year I was on that committee, they asked me to be part of the test prep class, which we were in the process of designing. Before, you just kind of do it on your own. And I think they would send you a sample of about 20 questions. Well, we decided, that's just not quite enough to do.
Right.
And they were changing the way that the test was being done by CAA. Instead of 50 questions of multiple choice, then 50 true and false questions, they were going to go, all of them multiple choice. And so they really felt like they needed to get more information out there to ADs that were trying to take that class, because a lot of people were intimidated to take that test.
And they still are.
Yeah. But so we worked at trying to make those questions relevant to what athletic directors would be doing. And so we worked hard on that, and and like I said, I taught that class at the national level for 4 years, and I was the lead one the last 2 years. I was actually the lead teacher in that. And then I think it was my third or fourth year, they asked me to be the lead test administrator. And so I actually got to lead the exam at the national conference, and that was quite exciting for me. And again, I think a great thing for the state of Utah, having another person doing a high level job for the National Athletic Directors Association.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, you haven't mentioned, I would bet at our conference, I would say at least 10 years. I CAA prep, possibly longer, that everyone who's taken it in Utah, or at least over the past 10 years or longer, has got that from you. And that's been an invaluable service to all the ADs here.
Yeah, I think I taught that 15 years, actually. I think the only year I didn't teach it was the year that I was the president of the association.
Sure, that makes sense.
So, yeah.
And speaking about the president of the association, so now share some stories and some successes, and just your time as the president, because that's a big deal. Even though I don't want to say even though it's a state, but a president of an AD association, state or national, is a big deal, and you're one of just a few in Utah that have had that. So talk about that, and talk about how that experience helped you, changed you, etc.
Well, the funny thing about it is I ran 3 different times for that position and lost every time. And so I wasn't going to do it again. And then Bud Campbell, when he was still alive, taught me, he goes, you got to run one more time. I think the other person was running, I can't remember who it was, but he goes, I think you can beat him. And so I says, but I says, you sure? He says, yeah, I think you can beat him.
Yeah, Bud has a way of doing that, to talking you into doing stuff that you're not sure you want to do.
Yeah, especially after losing 3 times, I'm thinking, you know what? Just being from a small school, there's just a lot of people who don't know who you are.
Right.
But he says, I'll get you there. And so Bud was kind of my campaign manager that year. And I always kind of wanted to do it, but I knew it would take me out of my comfort zone. You know, I do have I guess you would say, a fear of public speaking, especially to big groups. I'm okay with kids a lot of times, but when you get me in front of adults, a lot of times that makes me a little nervous, get a little sweaty, a little, you know, you butterflies and so forth. But, you know, I always like to try to challenge myself, get out of my comfort zone. So that was one thing that I really wanted to do, and be the president of the association. So kind of a couple of things that I think happened when I did. First of all, I kind of had a theme. I think I was following Ron Dolphin either a year or two behind him, and him or Richard started the theme kind of thing for the president. And so I kind of thought, you know what can be my theme? And my theme that year was from John Wooden. Failure is not fatal, but failure to change might be. And
I remember it. Yes.
And I just really believe that, you know, everybody's going to fail, but what happens is, if are you going to continue to fail, or are you going to change and make something good happen? And I always believe that. And I use that saying quite a bit with my athletes too, that I coached, because failure is not fatal, but if you don't change, it could be. So that was kind of my theme. And then the year I was actually president was the year we changed venues down for the conference. I don't know if you remember that. We changed from
I remember it well.
the Lexington to the Avian, I think is what it was. Was it Lexington or Holiday Inn?
Well, it was the Lexington by the time we left, but it
Right.
has since become the Red Lion, and now it's
something else. Yeah.
Something else. But yes, I do remember that. I remember the change well, but I interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that was probably the big thing is I got to be the first president of the new venue. And of course, I think we had a lot of growing pains and so forth that first year, trying to figure things out. I think we actually had the dinner at one of the junior highs there.
We did the first 2 years we were down there, because of space and we hadn't figured it out. We had it 1 year at Desert Hills, and I think the next year we had it just at the middle school up the street, but we've
or vice versa
streamlined it since then. Yeah, but that's you are exactly right. So continue.
Yeah, so those were probably the two biggest things I think that we had one in change. I know that we were starting to really look at, you know, getting money for our scholarship winners. I think we increased our scholarship from like 500 to maybe even 750 for a couple of them at that time. I know we'd already moved to 5 scholarship winners then. I think we've been doing that for about 4 or 5 years. But, you know, those are probably the biggest things I think that happened when I was as president.
Well, talking about your theme, let me ask you a follow-up question. What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
I think my biggest disappointment was I think I was still a fairly young coach. I'd taken over the boys basketball program. It was my 3rd year, and I just finished up my 3rd year, and we'd had a very successful season. And I'd come in the next year with you know, some ideas and plans to improve it. And then I basically got a letter in my teacher's box saying that I'd been let go as a coach. And I was completely shocked, because I'd gone 20, I think 21-5 and 20-6 the 2 years previous. And I'm thinking, well, why are they letting me go? And I had, you know, I think I look back at that as my ego getting in the way. A lot of times I think it probably rubbed some people the wrong way. And, you know, sometimes when you're successful, especially at a young age, you kind of develop an ego. And, you know, I don't want to say you get upset at the world when things don't go your way. And I think as I look back over time, that was probably the best thing in the world for me. Not only was it good to be humbled, it was good for me personally, because I got to reconnect with my wife and my 2 boys that were still fairly young. I actually got to work with them a little bit in Little League football and baseball and basketball, which I hadn't been able to do over the last, as they were growing up, and they were just starting to get to that age as they were really getting involved in athletics and sports themselves. And so I think basically as a person, I think that was my biggest failure, is I just didn't realize how big my ego really was, and I needed to have it put in check. And I think it made me a much, much better person than I am today because of that.
That's a great answer. Great thoughts. Thanks for sharing that. Talk to our audience for a moment about the importance of mentorship as a young AD and being a mentor as a veteran AD to some of the other ADs in the state and nationally.
I think if you want to be successful, you've got to find someone that's been in this business a little bit. Like I said, I told you a few of the people that I kind of worked with and got to know a little bit that had been doing athletics for a while. And I can even throw your name in there. I know that me and you kind of went on at the same time, but you'd been an AD for a little bit longer than I had. And I was just a new one. And so I learned a lot from those people. And I think you need someone as a new AD coming in to connect with, because you're not going to know it all. And there's going to be situations that you're not going to know how to handle. And so anytime you can call up someone and say, hey, I've got this situation, it would be, what do you do when this happens? And I've been I've been our region chairman for our region, probably 10, 12 years now. And I've seen new ADs come and go from some of the schools in our region. And the first thing I tell them is, if you need anything, give me a call. I am willing to tell you and help you out any way you can, because I want to see you be successful. And I honestly do. I think our job as athletic administrators is very, very important. And I think you've got to be successful. And to be successful, you're going to have to contact people. And I want to see everybody's, successful as an athletic administrator.
Thanks for sharing that. Let's talk for a moment about your plans once you retire.
Now that I am retired,
well,
I am officially retired now.
And by the time this airs, you will have been retired for a couple of months.
Yeah. So you know what? I don't know what's I have in store for me. I know that I've got some payments coming to me from my job here, and for my first couple months of retirement that'll put me through. But I'm figuring by the time Christmas comes, I'm probably going to need to do something. So I haven't decided what it is. I tell people I think I'm going to be a millennial. I think I'll just go and I'll find me a job, and if it's not something I like, I'll just move on to the next one.
There you go.
That, or I tell people I'm just going to go sell popcorn in a movie theater or something like that. So,
I like it.
But I don't know. I don't think I see myself going back into education at all. I'm kind of one of those, I like to try different things and different experiences. I like to travel and stuff, but I like to see different places, things. I do know one thing is I am looking forward to Friday Night Lights. Being in Wendover, we don't have football, and so I've really missed just high school football. And
sure.
So that's one of the things and I've got a son that's really into football. We're talking about going to some of the big time football games. I'd love to see, Timpview play and Corner Canyon and Salem Hills and some of these schools that are very, very competitive. Because I'll be living in Utah County. That'll be kind of exciting for me. I haven't seen my own alma mater play since I played myself. So
wow.
So I haven't even stepped on the campus since I graduated. So it'll be nice. That's one of my first trips. I want to go up and see what the old school looks like. So those things are kind of things I'm looking forward to in retirement. And also I still want to be involved with the UIAAA, and who knows, maybe at the national level in some regard. So
all right, excellent. What's the favorite part of your job, Clayton?
I think it's just meeting people. I've got to meet a lot of great people I would have never had a connection with without this job as an athletic administrator. Being out in Wendover, we're out in Booneyville, a long ways away from things. being part of the association, not only, the UIAAA, but I've been on the executive committee for the UHSAA for the last 4 or 5 years. I've just made a lot of good connections, a lot of good people, and made a lot of good friends. I think it's just the people I've been able to work with and meet. So that's been my favorite part. The kids, I love working with the kids. Always have.
Sure.
You can't be an educator if you don't like kids. If you don't like kids, you shouldn't be an educator.
That is so true. Let's finish up with a couple of questions. The first one being, I ask all my guests this. So if you have 2 suggestions for a brand new athletic administrator and they needed to follow your suggestions in order to be successful, what would those 2 suggestions be?
Well, I think the first thing you have to, and we've talked a lot about it, you have to have a mentor. You have to have someone that you can connect with, because if you don't have that, it's going to make your job really, really tough. And I've told every one of my new ADs that have come into our region this, and I've told the new AD that's taken my place out in Wendover, you need to join the associations. You need that bit of professionalism in your to make your job easier. And I says there's plenty of classes out there that will teach you how to be a good athletic director. Your LTC 501, your 502, your law classes, 503, and then any of the ones that are more specific. I tell them, you've got to take that. You got to educate yourself and become better at the job that you do. So those are the 2 things I think that are very important as a new AD coming in.
Great advice, Clayton. Thanks for sharing that. What questions should I have asked you that I failed to ask?
Boy, I don't know. You think about all the things you could ask, but I'm just happy to be, what I've been doing for the last 30 years. Education has treated me really, really well. Being a teacher, being a coach, being an administrator. I've enjoyed it immensely, and I'm proud of the accomplishments that I've done as an athletic administrator and as an educator. And, I think, those are things that you look at. I don't know if there's any specific questions. So
I thank you, and the UIAAA thanks you. And there will be a little bit of a void with you gone since you're such a long-time member. But that wraps it up for this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our guest today has been Clayton Carter, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, and, still AD at Wendover, but probably retired by the time this airs. So thanks, Clayton, for being on the broadcast.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me, Mark. And I was really happy that you've put on something like this. I think this is great for our association.
Okay. Thank you. For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.